If you like this video, make sure to visit our Vimeo page and follow us to get the latest update.
So today we'll start with the third pillar, which is the charge management pillar. Okay. So the main objective of this pillar is to know how different charge calculation or freight charge calculations happen in SAP TM. Okay. So can anyone tell me why charge calculation is required? Why we need to do charge calculation?
On the basis of charges only, we will be able to know that how much we need to pay for
Yes.
a particular that transfer.
Yes, you're right. So if you see here, we have covered order management, we have covered planning. Now we are covering, so this execution piece and this charge piece, it is all happening on the same document, which is your freight order, freight booking. So let me cover this charge management. We'll come into the execution piece later on because it is just few changes in the statuses, okay, which we can see anytime. So the main objective of charge is to do a charge calculation in this object, business object, so that you can know how much you need to pay to the carrier. So when I say how much to pay to the carrier, that means every carrier needs to know how much will be paid for the services he is giving to the shipper. So for that, we need to determine a framework which will determine the total charge calculation. So during the Elytra days, if you remember, we used to create a shipment document and then we used to create a shipment cost document. And within the shipment document, we used to determine how much charges will be paid based on different criteria. But the criteria which were used in shipment document in Elytra was very limited. It was actually not using any of the specific charge calculation criteria which is used in transportation management process. So with the advent of TM, if the entire framework has changed. So now you see all the charge calculation which happens automatically in a freight order. So there are two ways by which charge calculation can happen. It can happen either manually or it can happen via automatically. So if you are doing a charge calculation automatically, in that case, all the charges will flow in the freight order through an agreement. But in case you are making the charges added manually means which charges are not expected, some unexpected charge. For example, demurrage charge, delay charge. So these are not part of agreement. So in that case, you can add also the charges manually in the freight order. So when you are actually having an agreement created, that means charge calculation is bound to happen automatically from the freight agreement, and it will happen when you are saving a freight order. So automatically in the freight order, you can see the charges calculation and everything. So in order to create this particular framework of transferring the charge from an agreement to freight order automatically, this framework is called as a TCM framework. TCM means Transportation Charge Calculation Framework. And within the framework, at the topmost level, we have an agreement. So an agreement is a contract between the purchasing org and the carrier. Okay, because unless an agreement is there, a carrier will not be knowing how much charges he will receive from the shipper, right? And within an agreement, you will see, and within an agreement, you will find a calculation sheet. The calculation sheet is something like a pricing procedure, where you can see what are the different charge types. You can see what are the different types of modes by which the calculation will happen. So calculation sheet, if you remember in your ECC, I think everyone has worked on pricing procedure. Anyone who doesn't know pricing procedure? Anyone? Everyone knows pricing procedure?
Sorry. Yes, and we have an idea about pricing procedure.
Okay. So pricing procedure is nothing but it's your calculation sheet. Okay, it's not exactly 1:1, but if I just want to compare the objects in ECC with your TM, we can say the calculation sheet is your pricing procedure. Then comes your rate table. So rate table is nothing but it's your condition record. So condition record means basically what are the rates you are going to charge based on different combinations of your charge criteria. That is a rate table. So rate table has different charge types. Charge types means the condition types. So what are the different elements of charges which makes up the total cost? That is actually, and how much charge you are going to charge per charge type, that is mentioned in your rate table. And finally, within the rate table, we have scale. So scale means basically the criteria of doing your charge calculation. So for example, if you want to determine your charge based on gross weight, based on net weight, based on volume, or okay, based on region, city, anything. So based on your dimensional or non-dimensional scales, if it is based on dimension, it will take into account product dimensions, packaging dimensions. If we're talking about non-dimension, it can be based on region, city, location, distance, etc. So based on that, all this information will be updated. So agreement, calculation sheet, rate table, scales, these are the different criteria based on which the charge calculation will happen in your freight order and freight booking. Okay. So now we'll see. So if we're setting up the system, obviously, first of all, we need to know the charge types. That is my condition type. Then we also need to determine the scales. And once the scales and the charge types are set up, the rate tables will be there. And then based on the rate table, calculation sheet followed by agreement. So all these elements actually do the charge calculation in your freight order. So we'll see now what is there in an agreement. So first of all, we'll go from the end user level. We'll see what is there in an agreement. Okay. So if I go to my TN 9.5, so if I go to NWBC, I go to NWBC. And then within this, you will find freight agreement management. And within the freight agreement management, you can see overall freight agreement management. What are the different types of freight agreement which is created in the system? You can see from the work list. And if you see in this work list, okay, so you have the freight agreements here. So let me open any freight agreements. Okay, so this is how your freight agreement looks like. So this is the freight agreement number. This is the description of the freight agreement. This is the version. Version means whenever you make any changes, if you want to have different versions of your agreement, you can maintain it. So you can activate a version management there. And so for every changes, a new version of your agreement will be created. That is called as the agreement version. External reference number. So external reference number means in case an agreement is created from a legacy system and it has a separate reference number there, you can always put in the legacy system number here. Agreement status released. Always remember, in order to make the charges flow from the freight agreement to the freight order, you need to release the agreement. So if the agreement is not released, then the charges will not trigger automatically in your freight order. And in order to make it release, click on set status release. Okay, so this is the details. So details means this is the time zone of the freight agreement. Validity period of the freight agreement. That means from which date to which date your agreement is valid. This is the priority of the agreement. This is the agreement type. Agreement type means the document type of the freight agreement. This is the currency. Currency means the document currency of the freight agreement, in which currency your freight agreement will be evaluated. Dimensional weight profile. Dimensional weight profile means basically if in case your charge calculation is based on product or packaging dimensions, based on length, width, height, etc., then you can use this dimensional weight profile. And if you see here, as I told you, every agreement is linked to a calculation sheet. So this calculation sheet either can be assigned at a header level or it can be assigned at an item level. So this is my item level information and this is my header level information. Okay. So when you are creating any calculation sheets, there is a word called as a template. So template means you can actually set up the calculation sheet in two ways. Either you can set up through configuration. If it is through configuration, it is a template. And if you are using a template, then in that case, this is the template which you are using. Okay. So template means basically the calculation sheet creation done through configuration. If you are not using template, then you can also create the calculation sheet through NWDC. So in that case, you have to repeat this creation in every client. So in that case, that will be a cutover activity if you are not using template, but you are just using calculation sheet. So both are same. The difference lies in the configuration and whether you want to do it as a cutover. That is the difference. So based on this template, actually your entire pricing procedure will be appearing in your agreement. These are the involved parties. So you have your purchase org, you have your carrier. So generally the recommendation is that freight agreement should have one purchase organization, one carrier. You should not have multiple freight agreement for a single carrier. Through configuration, you can also control multiple party concept. Multiple party means you can enter one purchase of multiple carrier or multiple carrier or one carrier multiple purchase of. Same thing. So you can have multiple entries maintained for purchase org and carrier with this a tick mark which you can put it as multiple party. In that case, multiple purchase org or multiple carriers will be invoked in your freight agreement. This is the general terms. General terms means in case you feel your agreement is going to vary based on shipping type, mode of transport, traffic direction, then you can use the general terms concept. Any question on the general data tab? Anything which is not clear? Clear to everyone?
Yes, yes. It's clear.
Okay. So the next part what you have is the item level information. Okay. So item level means if you scroll down here, you can specify what items you are transporting in your freight agreement. So you can create an item type and all. So if I scroll in the left, I have not entered here, but you can always enter some item type. Item type means here you can make a differentiator what items you are transporting in your freight agreement, whether it's a product, whether it's a package, whether it's a service, and if you are actually transporting or requiring any support from the carrier for service, then you can enter a service type. Okay. So this service type field is actually used in case you want to create a service order. So for service order, if you want to create a freight agreement for service order, then you have to put the item type for service and then enter the service type here. And here you can enter the different items. Or I will show you how to do that. Okay. So I'm just going through the individual level, field level and all. Want to use service, obviously mandatory, and this is my propagation. So if you want to propagate the services from this agreement to the service order, you can use this. Carrier selection. Carrier selection means the carrier with whom you are drawing up an agreement, you can enter the carrier code and you can also enter the carrier product here. That means if there are certain products based on which a transport is required from a specific carrier, then you can create a carrier service product. Carrier service product is an LSP scenario, not a shipper. This is the place where you can enter your calculation sheet template. So again, if you see, either this calculation sheet template is used at a header level or item. Item is mandatory, header is not mandatory. If you want to maintain it at item, then you can maintain the item information here. This is the validity period of your calculation sheet. So please note this validity period has to be within the agreement validity. And these are some other criteria or parameters based on which your calculation sheet determination will happen. If you want to determine your calculation sheet based on shipping type, based on mode of transport, based on means of transport, based on movement type, based on mode of transport, based on stage, based on your stage category, in that case you can use items. So in case your calculation sheet is different for different parameters, for all these parameters, then you have to create multiple line items. Okay, so that's why SAP has given you the option to enter the calculation sheet at an item level, because for different item transport, your calculation sheet may vary. This is the time departure or time determination. Basically, you can also specify whether calculation sheet determination varies based on arrival time, departure time, transit time, distance, duration, etc. So these are some other parameters which you can use. Okay, if you want to have, so this is leave it. So these are other types of service level. That means, for example, if based on your shipping conditions, your agreement is varying, your calculation sheet is varying, you can also enter a service level here. And remaining fields are mainly used for airline scenario. That's okay, not required. And here you can delete the line item. You can copy a new line item. You can update the validity period. So you can update this period here. And here you can also delete a calculation sheet. Here you can display a calculation sheet. Display calculation sheet means you can see what are the components which makes up the calculation sheet. You can also use the follow-up button to create your service order, to create your freight document. Can you tell me why freight document creation is allowed? Why you want to create a freight document from a freight agreement?
No idea. Well,
So the main reason why you may want, see, for example, I have a 1 year yearly contract, right? So when I have an yearly contract, so in case of a yearly contract, you can actually specify or consume that yearly contractual values through a freight document. So for example, suddenly in the weekend, I have an immediate transport, an urgent transport to be done. So you will not wait for the planner to come in, do the planning, because it's an emergency transport. So in that case, using the freight agreement, you can call upon your freight carrier and you can say, please do the transport. So accordingly, you just need to create a freight document with reference to that agreement so that the carrier knows how much you'll be paid for the charges. So you don't have to rerun the planning scenario again. So for that, you can use this freight document feature here directly from the agreement so that the charges which is calculated in an agreement will directly flow into a freight order at the time of instance of based on the service level, service condition, emergency transport, all this. Similarly, so you don't have to again reuse or recreate the data from scratch. You can directly copy the details from the agreement into the freight order. Similarly, you can also create a service order. So from the item level information, you can calculate the service order. You can calculate the total consumption of your capacity of your freight agreement. All this information is available from the follow-up button. And once you have defined the item, now you see here. So within the item, so once I click on this calculation sheet, you will see the charts type and the rate table. So where you see, if I click on this display calculation sheet, on the display calculation sheet button, you see for different charts types, we have different rate tables. So these two charge types do not have rate table. This means that these two charge types are either manual charge or they are the charge types which is dependent on some other charges. But in case you have a rate table, that means you have condition records to be maintained. So what is there in this? So if I click on this charge type, for example, first of all, you can go down, you can see what is there in your calculation sheet. So the first line, the first tab contains the basic data. So basic data means what is the charge type. This charge type is applicable for which stage category, shipping type, for which handling code, okay, for which rounding profile, whether it's a manual charge item, whether it's an item relevant for charge calculation, all this information you can see in the basic data. This is the rate table. So rate table means here you can actually specify which rate table template you can use. So rate table template means this is the condition record. So if you see here again, every calculation sheet through a charge type is linked to a rate table. So when you are using a rate table, system will not allow you to enter any amount here because in the rate table you have to enter the criteria and based on the criteria you have to give the amount. So all these things which you see here will basically come from the configuration of the templates. So when I come into the template configuration, I'll tell you all these things. So you can also specify some. Just 1 minute. All done. Which chapter? Data storage. Winning it. I will answer separate which was one pattern and what is that? What about the pay? What about it? Two times sales study. And here you can see the rate. Here you can specify the minimum rate or the maximum rate. So maximum rate means suppose for a specific rate table, you are specifying a minimum rate of 1000, maximum rate of 2000. So in case the charge calculation falls beyond the maximum rate, it will always calculate the maximum rate there. If it is beyond the minimum rate, the rate which is specified for the minimum amount will be specified. So again, when I'll go into the calculation sheet template, I'll show you what does each of these fields mean. This is the classification tab. So every charge type which you see here. So this is the charge type. Every charge type through configuration is linked to a category and subcategory. Similarly, you can specify here whether those charge types are mandatory or not. Statistical charge means there are charges which are calculated in TM, but it is not transferred to ERP. In that case, if you want certain charges should not be transferred to ERP, you can mark them as statistical. If a charge is relevant for tax, then you can put a tick mark as tax. This is the precondition. So precondition means again, in case the calculation sheet item determination is based on certain precondition items, then you can specify the precondition rule. One is based on your trade lane. So trade lane means based on the source, based on the destination, you can define for which trade lane, which calculation sheet is to be determined. You can also specify the source direction, the destination direction, means of transport, mode of transport, shipping type, etc. This is the services. Services means from which service level, whether it's your express, whether it's your standard, whether it's urgent. So based on which service level your particular services should be used. This is the partner. That means for which partner function role, for which business partner ID, your particular calculation sheet will be triggered. That is known as a precondition. This is the notes tab. Notes tab means the text tab. So for which text, if you want to specify some text in the freight agreement, then this notes tab will be used. So once you have defined this, that means automatically then I go to the rate table, because if you see, for example, for the first charge type, the rate table is there, but for the second and third, if I select on the second, my rate table will be display mode because there is no rate table assigned. So this charge type needs to be calculated manually. But in case I need to have a rate table, so I click on this, I go on display rate table. And when I go on to the display rate table, you will find what is there in the rate table. So in my rate table, I always have a charge type. So one charge type is always there in one rate table. Although SAP can have multiple charge types in one rate table, but the recommendation is to have one charge type to one rate table. So now we are going into maintaining the rates for that particular charge type. So here are different features of your charge type. What is the category of charge, subcategory of charge, whether your whether your charge is positive, whether your charge is negative, whether their charge is in absolute value or percentage value. So all this information comes from the configuration. This is the rate table number and to whom the rate table is linked, whether it's a service provider or whether it's actually your customer. So because we can also use the same freight agreement concept while paying to your customer as well as service provider. So in our case, we are doing a shipper scenario, so the charge usage should be service provider. And this is the reference details of your freight agreement. This is the rate table template. This is the freight agreement. This is the calculation sheet. And here, if you scroll down, you will see the scales. So scales means now if you see scales is the criteria. So what is the criteria based on which my charge calculation will happen? I say my calculation will happen based on source location, based on destination location, based on my gross weight. So these are the three criteria based on which my charge calculation will happen. Now I have to determine the rates for these three charges, right? For these criteria. So in order to maintain the rates, that's why we call it as a rate table. You have to go into the dates and values tab because my rates are based on source location, destination location, and gross weight. So accordingly, so because my charge calculation is based on these three parameters, source, destination, weight, and here you can actually maintain the rates for a specific source log, for a specific destination log, for a specific gross weight, you can maintain the rates. And if you want to insert more rates, you can click on insert. You can delete the rates. You can display the rates in multiple combination. Multiple combination means sometimes what happens, you only view one rate, although you have maintained multiple. So in order to do that, you can specify all rate combination. You can export to Excel. You can show high details. All these things you can do it. And because my calculation of gross weight is based on a specific rule, my rule says my gross weight is rate is 2. So if you see this is 1 kg. 1 kg means it can also be 100 kg, right? So that means I'm charging to my customer, to my carrier is charging €2 per 500 kg. That means per kg is charging 2 euro. So whether the price limit is 100 or 1, that is where the calculation rule is specified. And once you have done this maintenance data, first of all, you have to make the sales status released so that your rate table is released. And once your rate table is released, then you can go back and you can release your rate agreement. So this is how the entire processes of your, not process, I would like to say the end user perspective of rate agreement is about. Any question?
Hello, Virendra. Can we set up the calculation rules on the basis of gross volumes?
Yes. There are a lot of dimensions which is there in standard SAP which you can leverage and calculate your charge rules.
Means on the basis of gross volume, gross weight, and net volume, net weight.
Yes, everything. So these are called as the dimensional scales. So all the dimensional scales are available in standard SAP.
Okay.
Any question from anyone? Okay. So then we go into the business partner tab. So in the business partner tab, you will see which is the business partner with whom your agreement is there. Obviously, my business partner is Career. So if you want to add some more roles, you can do it. Okay. So this is the Notes tab. So what is the Notes tab? So Notes tab means if you want to insert some text in the freight agreement, click on Insert, and here you can write the text. Okay. This is the Attachments tab. So Attachments tab means if you want to attach anything in your freight agreement, you can always click on the Attachment tab. Then you got administrative data. So administrative data means who has created or changed what type of data. This is output management. So output management means if you want to see the document preview of your freight agreement, you can click on this document preview and you can see the details of the freight agreement. So the document preview. So when we'll come into the output management in details, we'll see this. So in other words, document preview means where you can see the layout or the output. Suppose if you want to print out a document preview or print out a freight agreement, you can always take a printout by going into the document preview. So this output management tab, what you see is mainly used for triggering the output. So if you want to trigger and print out and fax, you can click on print, fax, email, everything. So I think already we have covered this as part of your freight unit freight order. So the same tabs appear here. And here you can see the action details. So FAG means freight agreement. So for any type of printouts related to freight agreement, we have to use this action profile. And if you want to save this freight order to a freight agreement to any specific email ID, then you can specify the email of fax detail, recipient ID and address. This is a version. So version means in case you want to have multiple versions of your freight agreement, you can do it. This is the Excel integration. So Excel integration means basically if you want to change the rates of your freight agreement, then you can download the file and then you can upload the file with the updated rates change. So that is called as the file download, file upload button. And whenever you want to make changes in your freight agreement, the rates are maintained with reference to validity dates, description, capacities, etc. This is the edit button. This is the save status button where you can actually release your freight agreement. You can deactivate a freight agreement. Deactivate means you can actually nullify the freight agreement creation by deactivating it. So deactivation always requires a reason code why you want to deactivate. You can generate a new version. So all the new versions will appear in the versions tab. Just in the item level, you created freight order, freight booking. Similarly, in the header level also, you can create a freight order, freight booking, service order. And this is RFQ master. RFQ master means request for quotation. So based on an agreement, if you want to, leverage an existing agreement and then use this to create your new and request a new quotation. Suppose for a new trade lane and all. In that case, you can create an RFQ master for them. You can also show all duplicates. All duplicate means in case, for a single carrier, there are two freight agreements created by mistake, then all the duplicates can be shown. And in case you are changing any rate request, then it can either be accepted or rejected. So this is all you have for your freight agreement. Any other question? Okay. So from configuration perspective, first of all, we'll see or we'll create a document type for freight agreement. So if you see, every freight agreement has a document type. So we'll first of all see what does a document type contains for a freight agreement. We go here, we go to SPRO. We go to transport management. We go to master data. Under here, if you see agreement and service. And here we go to the freight agreement types. So before you go to the freight agreement types, we have to create an item type. So item type means what? So item type means this one. This is the item type. So what item you are transporting? So in standard, there are certain item types. So for example, one of the item type is, for example, PM freight agreement for FTL. Okay. You can also have different item types for product, for package, for service, etc. And if I click here, you can specify, okay, as you have seen from an item level also, you can create your freight order, freight booking, right? Service order. So here from the configuration, you can create a default freight order type, freight booking type, service order type based on the item type which you have created. Okay. And you can also specify preconditions. So in case your freight agreement has to be determined based on certain precondition, you can specify the values. Okay, for a specific mode of transport, for a specific shipping type, for a specific stage category, stage type and all, how your item types will actually be triggering to trigger the preconditions for your freight agreement. That is what it is. Okay. So we use the standard freight agreement FRA1 as the item type. And this is the freight agreement types. So freight agreement type here, if you see, so my freight agreement type here was DXFA. So this is DXFA. So this is the agreement type. This is the agreement description. As you know, always one document type needs to be marked as a default. So this is the default agreement type. So this default will be used in case system is not able to determine a correct freight agreement type, and then from default system finds out, okay, this is the default agreement type which I can use. RFQ or quotation type. So RFQ or quotation type means, for example, if you go here you can actually create an RFQ master. So RFQ master means you need to know what is the RFQ type for which you want to create an RFQ master. So in that case, you can specify the RFQ type. You can track the change. Track change means in case there are any changes to be tracked in your agreement, then you can do that. Multiple party. Multiple party means, so right now if you see in the freight agreement, you have a single purchase of single carrier. If you want to have multiple purchase of a multiple carrier, in that case, you can put in a tick mark called as approval of multiple party. This is the approval workflow. So approval workflow means if you want to use a workflow functionality to approve a particular agreement, then the approval workflow should be used. You can also edit an agreement. You can use a number range. And here you can use a calculation sheet template. So as you see here, when I will be creating a freight agreement manually, I will enter the calculation sheet template here. But if you know that for a specific freight agreement, I need to use a specific calculation sheet template, then you can use the calculation sheet template here, or else you can keep it blank. And these are the different types of time departure calendar, transit calendar, arrival calendar. So that means in case your freight agreement. So if you go into the item level, so these are certain preconditions, right? Based on certain preconditions, based on departure calendar, arrival calendar, and transit calendar, you can actually decide which freight agreement items to be considered for calculation. Definitely, you can provide all this information here. And this is the web WD apply config. WD apply config means web deploy apply configuration, where if you want to change the layout of your screen, if you want to add new fields, new screens and all, then your developer will provide you this WD apply config. And in case you want an item to be flow means you want this item type to be appearing here, right? Item type currently is blank because you have not activated that. But if you want item to be coming here, then you have to activate the item flow. BW relevance means if it is relevant for BW reporting and all, then BW relevance will be used. Again, default FO type, default FB type, default service order type. So in case you want to create a default FO type, FB type, all these things, okay? In that case, with what freight order type, with what freight booking type, with what service order type, my freight agreement will be created, right? So for that, you need to define the document type. So in order to define the document type, you can specify the document type here. This is the duplication check. So duplication check means in case one carrier has got multiple freight agreement with the same purchase order. In that case, you can activate this duplication check so that if second part, if there is any other contract specialist who is also going to create the same agreement with the same carrier later on, system will throw an error that already an agreement exists. You can display the total capacity. So in case you want to view what is the capacity agreement with the carrier in terms of length, weight, volume, height, etc., you can always specify the capacity. Partner profile, I think all of you know, if you want to have additional business partner in your freight agreement, then you can use this. And finally, you need to trigger an output from your freight agreement. So that you can do a printing, faxing, emailing and all these things are part of the output profile. And finally, you can also create an agreement Excel. So agreement Excel basically, if you go into the help button, so this will indicate whether you want the system to enable or disable viewing of agreements in portal. And if you go on to the left hand side, you can see what are the preconditions based on which your agreement will be determined. So precondition means basically based on stage time, movement type, service level, mode of transport, traffic direction, etc. So based on different preconditions, different values are there. These are the item types. So whatever item type we have created in the previous screen configuration, you can assign the item type here. So I will create one item type. Sorry, I create one freight agreement type, Z3M1. So I can say track change multiple parties. I will not add the calculation sheet template here. I can enable item flow. It is also activated for BW relevance. I can do a duplication check. I can display total capacity. So I can create a freight agreement ZTM1 and I can go to the item types. And in the item type, I just create this. Okay. So this is a configuration which we will do, which we will use in our other in the part of the freight agreement process. Okay. So any question from anyone? So we just created the freight agreement and then later on we'll see when we create the end user part, when the freight agreement will be created, how the calculation sheet flows, how the rate table will be linked, all this information we'll slowly see and assign it here. Okay. Any question on the end user part of freight agreement and the configuration of freight agreement?
Virendra, by checking the duplication check, we are not able to create the multiple agreements for a single
Yes.
carrier.
Yes.
Okay.
It will not
And
be that, it's not that you will not be able to create, you will get a message there. At least that will prevent you from not creating. I don't think it is going to hard stop you.
okay, okay. And Virendra, in freight agreement, there are multiple organizations for a multiple carriers or a single carrier.
So what you saw in my example, it's one carrier, one purchase order, right? But now, because I'm putting a tick mark for multiple party, you will see when I create a freight agreement, you will see you can enter multiple purchase of multiple carrier. So this multiple party means you can add multiple carrier, multiple purchase order. Clear to everyone? Clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now I stop here. So how much you have proceeded with the selection profile and other profiles? How much you have progressed on that? Has any group created the selection profile, planning profile? Hello. So these two things will go parallelly. One, the theoretical part is going to take place, which I'm working with you. Okay. But parallelly, you have to also set up the things which I've covered in the last class. Okay. So that part is required as well for everyone. So I request everyone with your respective groups to please start creating the profile, or else if you don't do the profile, if you don't know how to do planning, you cannot proceed ahead. Okay. We have to check that by creating the proper profile, whether the freight units are appearing or not. Has any team done that? Hello. Hello, anyone there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, has anyone done the selection profile, planning profile?
Only till flight order and flight booking part is completed, not selection program.
So then you get onto the group and just do, you have to do that. Okay. I'm there online. So just start on your group work. So create your selection profile, create a planning profile, and just see if you can plan any freight unit in that transportation cockpit. So the planning part has to complete, or else you cannot do the charge calculation. Okay.
Okay.
So get onto your groups, just ping me in message. I'm there online. Where you are stuck, just let me know. Okay.
Thank you for attending the session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to visit our Vimeo page and follow for more upcoming videos.